style sheet, etc. That already existed in HTML even before we wrote the media queries. And that's been extended, generalized. Now you can use parameters as well. So the third line here, for example, says this style sheet here is for a screen, for a PC, say, a typical desktop browser. But only if the width, the minimum width of the window is 200 pixels. And the fourth one is the opposite. It's also for the same kind of device, for a desktop browser, but only if the window is no wider than 199 pixels. You can extend that. There's more things you can ask if there's color, how many bits of color you have, if you need that, a few other things. There's exactly 11 parameters that you can ask for, such as the screen size, the width, the height, the device, how many pixels the total screen width is, aspect ratio, whether you have square pixels or not, things like that. And as I said, it's a generalization of what existed already in HTML and in XML. It's a bit simpler than the DI select, but it's more limited as well. So there's always a choice you have to make when you're on offer. What do you use for adaptation? This is one of the choices. So if you adapt something, you want to know what to adapt to. And hopefully you don't have to adapt to every single device individually. At the moment, that's actually what happens. There are content providers for mobile phones, and there are companies that provide adaptation solutions. You can buy software from them. And that software comes with huge databases of all the hundreds of different phones that are out there. And they provide rules, export systems, etc., to adapt your content to all of those different devices. That's costly. That costs a lot of money to do that. And also, it's very hard to keep those databases up to date because new phones are coming out by the month. So hopefully, we can reach a situation where there's more commonality, there's a sort of common base that all those devices adhere to, that they all implement, all support. And that's what we call the mobile profile. So mobile profile is a subset of all the technologies we have that we hope will be implemented by all mobile devices. We're creating them, w3c again, in cooperation with OMA, and we have them already for CSS, CSS mobile profile, XHTML, it's called XHTML Basic. Smile has one, SVG called it SVG Tiny. Those are profiles, are subsets of the full specification. So for styling, for text documents, for multimedia, for vector graphics. We have them for others as well. So that's, if you stick to those, to what's in the profile, it should work everywhere, is the idea. We also have profiles for printers, we have profiles for TV as well. But I'm concentrating on mobile here. And we have something that combines all those profiles together. It's called Wicked. You have to pronounce it Wicked. And that's a working draft at the moment. It's I think it's more or less stable. They expect to be starting the testing phase early next year. And the 1.0 version of that, of Wicked Mobile, contains XHTML, SVG, SVG Tiny 1.2, CSS Mobile Profile 1.0, JPEG and PNG. And if you stick to that content expressed in those profiles, it should work on all smartphones. If it doesn't work already, it should work soon, all the new versions, is the idea. And it also will work on desktop computers because those are more powerful. They actually support more than this. This is not specific to mobile, but I mentioned it here because the reason we're working on it at the moment is because of a request from the mobile content providers. This is a new idea for how to do layout, high-level layout with CSS. I don't know if the designers in the room, but they may have struggled with the famous 3-column liquid layout in CSS, how to use floats and absolute positioning. So all kinds of fancy layouts. It's quite hard. CSS is a bit, what we have so far in CSS is a bit too primitive for that. It's low level. You can position things, but then you lose the relation with other things that are also positioned. So this is an old idea. The idea is also already 10 years old, but 10 years ago there was no interest in it. The web wasn't ready for it. But now the mobile providers especially want to build portal sites. That's the standard use case. Sites that are built up of smaller sites coming in from various other content providers. Think of a news portal, for example, where news is coming in from the various news providers, a bit from Reuters, a bit from France Press, etc. And they all have their window, and the content is delivered. It has its style already. It just has to be laid out on the screen. And it has to be laid out differently depending on the screen size. If you have a big screen, you can put many things next to each other. If you have a small screen, you can only create one column. If you have a high screen, you can put things underneath each other, etc. So how to do that with CSS at the moment, it's quite hard. You can do it, but if you have a different screen size, you have to do a lot of work to create a new layout for that screen size again. So this is an idea to describe the whole layout basically in one line. I put it on 2 lines here for readability. You can see this as sort of ASCII graphics. This says I have a table-like layout, a grid, we call it, with two rows. The top row is a single large cell called A. Every cell has a letter for its name. And the bottom row has 3 columns, B, C, and D. And then you can position other elements in the document by means of the position property. So something called main goes into the top part, the weather goes in the bottom left, news goes in the middle, and commercials or whatever goes into the top, the bottom right slot in the grid. It's a simple example. There are other ways, other extensions to set the size to specific sizes, or make the size flexible or not. This is the basic principle. So this is a draft at the moment. As I said, the reason the CSS working group is working on this was a request from the mobile vendors, mobile providers. The portal, I mentioned that. So it is the first draft was just published a week ago, I think. So it's very early. What I show you here is the current idea, but it may still completely change depending on what feedback we get. So if you're interested in this, please give us feedback. You find all the information on the w3c site, w3.org. So the advantages of this idea, the grids layout, whatever syntax we finally end up with, is that it's similar to tables, and people know how to do layout with tables. Even though we tell them don't use tables for layout, because it's bad for accessibility and bad for reusability of the content. They know how tables work. So this is a way to use the good parts of tables, the implicit alignment, the things are everything in the same row has the same size, everything in the same column has the same size. That's implicit. You don't have to juggle with percentages of pixels. So that's very nice advantage of table, and that's provided now by the CSS layout. And the other thing that is not available with tables, but that was available with positioning in CSS is you can change the order of things. So if you have your portal site and in the source HTML file, it starts with a menu, a navigation menu, then you get a banner, then you get main content, then you get a copyright, then you get some other things. That order may be correct for some device, but it may not be right for another one. If you have a big screen, you can put for example, the menu on the left, news items in the middle, commercials on the right, copyright at the bottom. And that order, left to right, top to bottom, may be the order that it has in the source file. But if your screen is smaller on a phone, for example, you may want to show the main content first, even though in the source file it's not the first thing. And this allows you to do that. So because it uses the position property from CSS, you can put things in the top left corner, even though they are not the first thing in the file. So that's important for keeping the independence between the source and the visual at the end. And it's recursive. That means you can nest these layouts. So if you have a top-level layout, and in the various slots, there may be individual layouts again. So if you get content from various authors, and each author has made its own mini page, its small page, with its own layout, you can just embed those in the bigger layout. You can do that with tables, of course, as well. So that's it's a nice feature of this idea. Multimodal, of course, is very important if you have small devices, because you don't have a big keyboard and you don't have a mouse. You have to interact with the device in some other ways. Or imagine you're in a car and you're interacting with the computer via the board computer. It has some knobs, some handles. You can use your voice to talk to it. It will speak to you in response, because sometimes you can't use the screen. So how to use various ways of input and output together is the subject of another working group in w3c, the multimodal interaction working group. And one of the big challenges there is how to switch the modality, the way of interacting while you're interacting. So imagine a situation, for example, you want to go somewhere. You have used your mobile phone to set up a route to somewhere. You have your GPS system. You said, I want to go there. It has calculated where you should go. Then you get into your car. You put your phone into the cradle. You can't use the phone anymore because you have to use the steering wheel. But the board computer takes over. You interact with it now via the knobs and handles and the voice that it has. The same session, the same information, but on a different device. Being able to switch that is quite hard. Well, yeah, because you can't assume a certain kind of interaction. You have to abstract it away. There's no keyboard, for example. There's no mouse. Sorry, different kind of mouse. Don't know if you can read that. This is basically the architecture that the multimodal working group came up with. Input at the top, speech, handwriting, keyboard, mouse, other things. Some input is automatically generated by your device. Information about the environment you're in, the temperature, the lighting level, sound level, if there's a lot of noise around you. Those things may be automatically generated and given as input to some application. At the bottom there's the output via audio, voice, synthesized voice, graphics, text, output to a printer, etc. The input has to be interpreted. Usually some sort of grammar is employed for that. The grammar describes what kind of input is expected at some point. That's a lexical level, syntactic level, has to be interpreted. What does it actually mean? And in that process, there's something, a technology that I'll show in the next slide called Emma that plays a role in there. The various input modalities are integrated. You can say something, and at the same time you can point to something. You can say, for example, I want to go there. And while you say the word there, you point with your finger or with a stylus or something on a map. And the system has to integrate those two kinds of information. The voice that says there,